All right, so we've got this AL wildcard matchup, and on the surface, it looks like, your classic David versus Goliath, right? The Detroit Tigers
Yeah.
back in the playoffs after a decade going up against those playoff-hardened Houston Astros. But, if you want to get past those headlines, go a little deeper, you've come to the right place. We've got your deep dive right here. And trust me, this series, it's way more interesting than it might seem.
Yeah, no, it really is. You mentioned David versus Goliath, and it's true. The Tigers are definitely the underdogs here, but, they finished the season on fire. 31-13. That kind of momentum, man, that could be huge, especially going against a team like the Astros, who, let's face it, might be feeling a little, I don't know, a little less pressure than usual this time around.
Okay, so let's dig into that a little bit. The Tigers, that late season run they had, that's awesome. But can they really keep that up against a team, with the experience that Houston has? We're talking their 9th playoff appearance in 10 years. That's crazy.
It's remarkable. And this is where that experience, it becomes really tangible, Think about it. The Astros core hitters, those guys, they've been there, done that in October. They have a combined, get this, 2,317 plate appearances in the postseason. That's a PhD in playoff pressure right there.
Wow. 2,317. That's nuts. No wonder they always seem to find a way.
Right. But here's the thing. The Astros themselves, they started the season 7-19. That's a deeper hole than the Tigers were ever in. They know how to bounce back, but it just shows that even the best teams, they can be vulnerable.
Interesting. So both teams, they've shown resilience this season, but in different ways. So which one matters more? Which one is more important, more valuable in a short series? In a high pressure series like, this wild card, that's what we're going to try to figure out.
That's the million-dollar question. And it's not just about the players on the field either. The managers in this series, they add a whole other layer to it. It's especially with A.J. Hinch, right, leading the Tigers against his old team.
Oh, man. Talk about an awkward reunion. Hinch going up against those Astros, the team he led to that 2017 World Series. There's history there, right?
Oh, yeah. A lot of history. Hinch's time in Houston, it wasn't without its controversies. You got the 2017 sign-stealing scandal. Some people say it tainted their title. And it puts Hinch right back in the spotlight, facing his former team. He's admitted his role. He's apologized. But there's going to be an extra level of intensity there because of it.
For sure. And you got to think the Astros players, they haven't forgotten about it either, right? It adds another layer to everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, let's not forget Dusty Baker. He retired after last season, right? So it's Joe Espada's turn now, running the show in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And he was Hinch's bench coach back then. So, this matchup, it's got to be a little personal for him, too.
It's like, what is it, the student going toe-to-toe with the master or something like that? And we've seen this kind of, managerial drama before in the playoffs, right? Sometimes those emotional undercurrents, man, they can be a real X factor. But let's switch gears for a second. Let's talk about those players taking the field on opening night. Game 1, we've got a pitching matchup that has everybody talking.
Yeah, game 1, you've got Detroit throwing out their ace, Tarek Skubal going up against Framber Valdez. Man, that's must-see TV right there. I mean, what Skubal did this year, that was special.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the most dominant pitching seasons we've seen in years.
Yeah, it's not just that he led the American League in ERA, wins, and strikeouts. He's, I think, the first guy since Verlander in 2011 to win the pitching Triple Crown.
It's incredible.
Which, that's saying something.
Especially in today's game. In today's game where offense is,
yeah,
it's king.
So, okay, we know Skubal's got the stuff right, but you were talking about the Astros and their experience. Does that come into play here? Can a young pitcher, like Skubal, can he handle the pressure cooker of the playoffs?
That's the question. Because on the other side, you've got Valdez, who has been there.
Right.
He's done that. He's pitched in some of the biggest games you could imagine.
Right.
He knows what it takes to succeed in October, and he's coming off a really strong finish to the regular season.
Yeah, you mentioned that his second half, and I was a little worried about the inconsistency earlier in the year.
Right.
But a 1.96 ERA after the All-Star break?
Yeah, I mean,
that's not just good.
Yeah.
That's lights out.
Absolutely.
When it mattered most.
Yeah. He really seemed to find his groove down the stretch. But let's not forget, Valdez also had that Game 2 meltdown against the Yankees in the ALCS last year.
Oh, I remember that.
5 runs, 2 1/3 innings. I mean, that's got to weigh on him a little bit, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's got to be looking to kind of rewrite that script to prove he can handle it this time around. But, even with that rough outing, Valdez has shown that he can be dominant in the postseason. Remember, what was it, 2022 World Series? He was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
He was a huge reason they won it all.
He was a workhorse in that series. But, let's be honest. The Astros' chances in this series, they really hinge on whether or not Yordan Alvarez is healthy.
Oh, that's right. He hurt his knee, right?
Sprained knee.
Sprained
He's
it.
questionable for Game 1.
Yeah.
And we all know what he means to that lineup.
I mean, the guy's a game changer. When you're talking about a guy hitting .305 with 35 homers, 86 ribbies, I mean, you can't replace that.
You can't just plug somebody else in there, no.
Right.
And it just puts that much more pressure on guys like Altuve and Bregman.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, those are two of the best hitters in baseball.
Yeah.
But if Alvarez is out or even limited,
Yeah.
it's a blow.
It's a big blow, especially since they're dealing with, they got a couple other guys banged up too.
Sure.
So that Astros injury report, definitely something to keep an eye on. But even without Alvarez, this is still a lineup that's got guys who have been there.
Oh,
They've done that in October. The Tigers, on the other hand, they're relying on a lot of young guys, right? Guys like Green and Torkelson. That's where that Astros experience, again, could really be an advantage. These young hitters, they're going to see a lot of different looks from these Astros pitchers.
A lot of veteran savvy on the mound.
It's like facing a veteran chess player when you're still learning the game.
Right.
You might have a few tricks up your sleeve, but they've seen it all before. But let's give the Tigers some credit here, okay? They did lead the American League in runs scored during that stretch in August and September.
Yeah, they did.
When they were so hot.
They found ways to score.
Even against some good pitching.
For sure.
And, they don't rely on the long ball as much as some teams do, but they've got some pop.
They can leave the yard.
Speaking of which, I was looking at some stats earlier, and it surprised me that the Tigers actually out-homered their opponents this season.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's not what you would expect.
Right.
Especially with their ballpark.
Comerica, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pitcher's park.
It's a pitcher's park. And they're not known for, the long ball. Yeah. I guess it just goes to show you can't always judge a team by their reputation or what you think you know about them.
No, that's what makes this series so fun.
Right.
Like these contrasting styles, all the different storylines, and then just this question of, does experience or momentum, which one matters more in a short series?
Yeah.
It's going to be fun to watch.
It's like a clash of styles, right? You got the Astros, they're like the veteran fighter, knows all the tricks. And then the Tigers, they're young, maybe a little unorthodox. But they can bring it. They can pack a punch. Speaking of punches, I got to ask, how do these lineups actually stack up when we're talking about power?
Well, you mentioned the Tigers out-homered their opponents, which is surprising. But just to give you some context here, they hit 168 home runs this season, the Astros. Only 152.
Wow, really? I would not have guessed that. I totally bought into that narrative that the Astros, they're all about the long ball.
Yeah, it's a common misconception. They can hit for power, for sure, but they're disciplined. They work counts. They put the ball in play. They can manufacture runs. There's a lot of ways they can beat you.
Okay, that makes sense. But you know me, I love a good pitching duel.
Oh.
What else can you tell me about these pitching staffs? I mean, we talked about Skubal. We talked about Valdez. What about the rest of the guys?
Well, both teams have some interesting arms, for sure. For the Astros, you got Hunter Brown. He had a breakout season. You mentioned those 179 strikeouts.
Yeah.
The guy's got electric stuff.
Yeah.
But he can get a little wild sometimes.
It's like those young guys with the high strikeout weights. Right?
Yeah.
It's a fine line between being totally unhittable and then, walking a bunch of guys.
Exactly. And then for the Tigers, they're going to be relying on guys like Eduardo Rodriguez, Matt Manning to step up, especially in those games 2 and 3. They've both shown flashes.
Yeah.
But they got to be at their best to shut down this Astros lineup.
It's true. And that Tigers pitching, that depth that's a big question mark in this series, right? They rode their starters pretty hard down the stretch.
Especially Skubal.
Can they hold up? Especially in a 5-game series.
And the Astros have the depth to, grind out at bats, wear down those opposing pitchers. And then they make you pay late in the game. That's kind of their game.
So we come back to where we started, right? Experience versus momentum. But it's also those X factors. It's the unexpected stuff.
Right, those little things.
That could really swing a series like this.
You got the Hinch factor.
Yeah.
You got the Alvarez injury. You got the Tigers and all their home runs. It's like, who knows?
And that's what's so fun about the playoffs, right? It's unpredictable. It's full of emotion.
It's intense.
And it comes down to who can, who wants it more, who can rise to the occasion when the lights are bright.
Yeah, you said it.
So, all right, I got to ask, what's your gut feeling? Who wins this thing?
I'm going with my head over my heart on this one, and I think I got to go with the Astros. I think their experience, their depth, their ability to win in different ways, it might be too much for the Tigers.
Yeah, it's a fair assessment. I wouldn't count the Tigers out, though. They got that underdog thing going for them. And that's dangerous, because when you got nothing to lose...
Right, and you steal a game early, who knows? Anything can happen. That's baseball.
Right.
That's baseball, baby. All right, this has been a blast. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. And for you listening at home, here's something to think about as you watch this series unfold. We talked a lot about the Tigers' pitching, but their defense, it wasn't always pretty this year. Can they make those plays when it matters most? Or will those defensive miscues end up being their downfall? We'll see. Enjoy.
Oh, this you crazy mother.